So what's the crack? Welcome back to another episode of Meet the Members. Andy's so big here he's out of frame. Flip me. Look at that. I feel like a YouTuber interview reaching and touch the camera like that.
Some setup.
The studio that's made available for all of the members in the Baths. So it's very, very beautiful. We're with Andrew McCracken today, long time resident of Ormeau Baths. Here's a tough one. When did you come to Ormeau Baths?
Very good question.
Do you remember? Because it's probably been multiple years.
I think the very first time I set foot in the baths, we didn't really know what door to go in. We came to the back door, we pressed the doorbell, and we heard it going, and we didn't know if that only we heard that or everybody heard that, but we later learned that everybody in the whole place hears the doorbell. We must have rang it about 30 times. And then I think whoever was working on the desk at the time was a guy called James. He's like, I'm glad you know the doorbell works. Or something like that. So but I think that was 2017.
2017.
I think.
That was pretty early on in this place's history then.
Yeah, wouldn't have been far away.
Why did you come here? Like, what even brought you to the doorbell?
So it was a kind of idea for a startup that me and kind of a couple of other guys had started, kind of percolating the idea and developing it a wee bit. And we heard that there was kind of a pre-accelerator going on here. We were an Irish company at that time, and we knew that this scheme here, and we had to be a British company, I think, to join. So we were scrambling to kind of change over the business, and there was like an open day that we managed to wangle our way into.
Nice one.
And their Ignite is, I think, two different schemes. There's a pre-accelerator and an accelerator.
There's a lot going on.
And we ended up applying for the wrong one. So we applied for the next stage one, the accelerator one, when the idea was so early stage.
In its infancy, sort of.
In its infancy. And we landed into the accelerator interviews. I don't know how we managed to wangle it, but we did. And chatted through, it was like 20 minutes with each kind of person or whatever. And we were told we were far too early stage, but they liked our team. And somebody randomly just had dropped out of the pre-accelerator at that time.
Brilliant.
And they said, listen, we would like he's on board. So we were like 2 or 3 months late for the pre-accelerator starting. I think that's the reason why we applied for the second one. Because we were too late to apply for the first one. And they managed to let us in.
So you snuck in?
We snuck in.
So what was that idea? Tell us about that.
So the idea was the business was called gofyt, and that stood for Go Find Your Trainer. And effectively it was an easy way to find and book a local massage therapist, physiotherapist, personal trainer or group training class. And then that was from the buyer side. From the seller side, it was a marketplace platform that connected the buyer and the seller. And we kind of done a lot of research and knew that we kind of had to find problems for each side. So for the buyer side, as I just said, it was an easy way to find the therapist. But for the therapist side, they had their own kind of like a big amount of problems, so the platform kind of helped them just no-show rates, help them manage all aspects of the business, and connect them together in like a marketplace. Yeah, that was the idea.
So it's cool because if I run a CrossFit class or if I'm a physical therapist and I'm trying to like book up basically slots of my time, it can really help me onboard my clients and make that process smoother for both of us. But more importantly, find new clients as well.
Find new clients so people could randomly stumble upon you. Like saying, if I lived say Ballymena or Belfast, I just typed in fitness class Belfast, and all these fitness classes I didn't know existed just pop up. So it was a great way for the buyer to find something they didn't know about, or for, as you say, the seller to find new business.
And it's the convenience as well. Like I find like I used to do it more whenever I would travel, but even now locally, like very often I'll be like, oh flip me, I've missed my workout today, what will I do? I don't really want to go swimming, like maybe a wee bit of yoga or something, and you're scrambling looking for something, and if you have something that's funny, it's like, oh I could book into this class at 2 o'clock. It's like wham bam straight away. And again, you don't know about these things unless there's that meeting point digitally that you guys created.
Big time. So definitely that was kind of the initial vision that we had for it. That's where we wanted to get to, that kind of idea. So we started the process. We managed to go into the pre-accelerator and join the Ormeau Baths. Cool.
So like all startups, the vision that you start off with is rarely the place that you end up. So you have just recently exited from gofyt. You've recently sold it. So where did you guys end up, and how was it different from that original plan? I know we're skipping over like the journey of a lifetime here, but
very good question. Probably the cut a long answer short. We started off wanting to be all things for all men.
Yeah.
And that was the vision from the start. And you know, we want to be the thing. You could go swimming, you could do whatever.
Yeah.
But we quickly learned that we needed to be very effective for a small audience to get traction. So we started. We kind of a big massive net. We cut it very very thin, and focused on group trainers or physios or personal trainers kind of initially. Went down that route, and we were doing really well. We were gathering kind of momentum. We had a lot of kind of new listings and new sign-ups from the buyer side as well. We're getting to a very good stage. We were just about to hit the kind of 10,000 booking mark, and then COVID hit.
Crazy.
And it was kind of, we were at the stage where we could have either raised a round, or there was at that time there was an opportunity to sell. We went down the opportunity to sell, and this is just selling at that very very niche part. And it was quite a nice deal, but it all fell through because of COVID.
Yeah.
We had signed stuff and agreed fees and stuff and amounts, and then it just fell through because of COVID.
Crazy, man.
So kind of in the fallout of COVID, very difficult one. I think a lot of people were probably in the same boat with this in the startup community. The one's knocked out of your sales.
Yeah.
Because the momentum's going, and specifically our business, where it was all about like meeting people in person, that was just a no-go area for a year.
And like, you know, for the folks at home who don't remember COVID, you know, like it was one of those industries that just got absolutely ravaged. Like gyms closed, no group training for what felt like whatever, you know.
It was a massacre.
You went from like, you know, really like 100% to 0%, like.
Literally.
Yeah.
Literally, we had like X number of bookings come through a week, and that just went to zero. Literally zero.
That is so scary. Because you probably, like, I noticed, like, whenever you start something, you've got the dashboard open, and you're like, oh, got another booking, got another sale, got another, and like to see that number just go to zero, it's like seeing your heart rate flatline.
My business partner at the time, he was responsible for the client side, and I kind of was responsible for kind of like the product side. So everybody was just ringing him and saying, yes, we need to stop our membership, we need to stop this, we need to stop this, we need to stop this. Literally in one day, when it all kind of came to head. So yeah, that was, we started talking about that by the vision of where we ended up. The kind of lifespan of the business actually wasn't that long. It was maybe 3 years, so 3.5 maybe. So yeah, so we just kind of had got going, and we were just about to widen out the kind of search to kind of cater for more things. Yeah. And then COVID came in and like a wrecking ball. Yeah,
and like you said, I think a lot of people find themselves in the situation, do I effectively start again? Now, you wouldn't be exactly starting from scratch, but it certainly feels like that. Or do I then pivot and do something else, you know?
Yeah, I think when you're a kind of early stage founder, it's very, very easy to kind of either get bored because is all this pain and hassle really worth it, or pivot or want to try something else, or just get really discouraged because you've put everything into this, and something completely outside of your control has just completely flatlined the whole thing.
Deadly.
And you know, I know a lot of founders that are very resilient, and maybe they've had 2 or 3 really hard knocks on the bounce, but just keep going. For me at that point, certainly when lockdown hit, I was like, you know, I would be ready for a new challenge. Yeah. The startup scene, see, when you're not funded, it's not glamorous at all. It sounds glamorous. It sounds, you know, we're this, we're in this competition, we're in the baths, and you know, we've got this and that, and we've got all these bookings. But realistically, the reality of it is that actually doesn't mean that I've made much out of it. The business itself is gaining traction. So it's very long hours. Yeah. And then for me, I had to supplement the income with something else. So I, as a kind of a background in UX design, done a bit of contract work. Yeah. And when you're doing that for a period of time, and then you get a big hit, like setback like COVID. Yeah. And I was getting married in the mix there, and trying to start life and stuff. It knocked the one out of my sales.
So then, you know, you kind of alluded to that some founders are resilient and some aren't. Just because you then moved on to do other things doesn't mean that you weren't resilient, because that in itself showed a great deal of resiliency. So like, talk to us about like, how do you like climb back from something like that, or even where you're at today? How do you move past like selling gofyt and then deciding what to do next? Because there is this kind of like, I've seen like lots of different founders go different ways. Some of them just walk away from business completely. Some of them are like, that's it, I want to be a postman, or if they've done well, I want to retire, or you know, or they say I'm going to take a few years to do this. How did you go about thinking, and what are you actually doing now?
I think for my case, it was I kind of, even before we started the business and we were just talking ideas, I just always liked the idea of learning through that experience of starting a business. And in all honesty, gofyt was really never my passion. It wasn't something that I like dreamed of, or
Sure.
you know, but the other two co-founders, it was their passion. But I kind of came along for the ride and learned a lot. But it did really give me the bug.
Yeah.
And kind of at that time I was already self-employed for a number of years. So I'm very much in that space, and I never really had like settled anywhere longer than a year and a half for about 6 or 7 years. So I was always kind of used to new things and changing.
Yeah.
But when gofyt was probably the longest I've worked in something in the last probably 10 years, and it was 3.5 years. So yeah, it was discouraging with lockdown, but I would say when you're kind of self-employed, it's familiar ground when you start a business. And it's kind of, yes, as difficult as it was, it wasn't you. And I think when you used to run the business, it's kind of something you just have in your mind that this is a possibility. You always have to nearly think out worst case scenarios and stuff. But yeah, gofyt really, I kind of was a sign for me that it's time for something new. And in my mind, is if we can sell this, get something for it. Happy days. It's time for something new. So out of that, I kind of over lockdown again, because gofyt literally went to zero overnight. I just contracted for a financial company for a year, and I always had other ideas and things that I wanted to do in the background.
Sure.
Like I'm now 30. When I was 20, I had ideas for businesses, but I knew I didn't have the experience, skill, or whatever to do it. And gofyt was such a valuable lesson. And how to grow a business, how to start a business, what kind of components do you need, what aspects do you need to focus on and tweak and hone in. And for some of my earlier ideas, gofyt has been a fantastic kind of facilitator. In terms of wisdom, and when I say wisdom, that's not that I'm wise, it's because I've made a lot of mistakes and you learn from mistakes. So after gofyt, there's a whole kind of few other ideas that I really want to pursue. That has given me confidence actually that, yes, because we sold, now we didn't sell for any, you know, let's just say I'm not buying any big massive property.
The Tesla's parked outside, you know.
But it gave me confidence that this is actually doable.
Yeah.
And we literally had no experience in doing any sort of tech startup before it. And it showed me flip we actually can, if we apply ourselves, get somewhere with it. So it's gave me kind of more confidence to have go at something. And I think if you learn that, you'll always kind of come back to that, regardless of how discouraged you get or whatever, how many like hard knocks you get along the way. But yeah, so the other ideas and things I've had are kind of different apps and businesses in the kind of in the tech space, because I'm coming from a design point of view. I love kind of little casual games and things, and just a few kind of wee ideas and things. But then one thing I would have to say about a startup is you quickly learn if this life is for you or not, or probably a better way to phrase that is what's important for you in your life. Like in terms of work-life balance, do I want to work for a company that's going to go mega? Would I rather like to work for a company that stays small but provides a comfortable life? And that really let me see that I prefer the latter, or would be a desire for the latter. I think definitely in the start you can kind of get caught up in the kind of whole unicorn, let's take over the world. But for me, I kind of quickly saw that no, I don't actually, that doesn't resonate with me. I would prefer kind of having time for my family, but know the business or the bills are taken care of as well.
So when you go forward now, like in whatever is next for you, like even if you start another company, like how will you work differently? Like will you put in the 80 hours, or will you approach it from a different kind of perspective?
I think I would like to say I would approach it from a different perspective, but I do have a bit of an addictive personality in some ways, so you can so easily get lost in it. And again, at this time, if I'm doing something I'm really passionate about, it doesn't really feel like work. it's very easy to kind of get lost in it.
Yeah.
But certainly, I do not want to be at this stage of where I was burnt out before, working all hours for no money or whatever. I do not want to even ever be back there.
Yeah.
For me, it's all about what kind of small things can I make that will make a passive revenue stream for me.
Nice.
One thing that's let me see in a startup is the way to do that is the only way to do that, I think, is to charge outside of your time. When you're kind of time bound to something. That adds all sorts of things, like stress and stuff, or have to be there, I'm late for that meeting.
Yeah.
But for me, the thing that I think the startup taught me was when I go for a new business or a new thing, have that very much in my mind. Is it something I can easily make or sell, or something that can sell while I'm sleeping, or whatever? Effectively something that doesn't need me to run it. So that's kind of when I look forward ahead, even the kind of little say games or whatever, mobile games, it's very easy just to create one. If you do a good one, it'll just sell or whatever. Probably didn't answer that question that well.
No, it's good. Do you want to tell us about your game? You don't have to.
So it's not really at the stage of launch yet, but it'll kind of be in the educational, casual space there that's heavily gamified.
Yeah.
So it'll be like a simple game that you can play for 10 minutes on the bus or whatever.
Yeah.
And like learn something.
Like a Duolingo, of a different kind.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It's kind of in the trivia space. I don't want to say too much about it because I think it's not fully even defined yet.
Well, I've seen it and I like it. I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
And I think it's one of those things, like you said, like it's a lot of work up front, but you could see this being like a staple that would sit on the App Store for like 10 years plus.
Well, that would be the dream
Do you know what I
scenario.
mean? So.
Be the dream scenario for sure. I think I'm maybe a bit strange though, because of, I don't know, there's always a few things talking about, and I think when you learn kind of the skills or trade as a designer, there's kind of nearly no limit to what you can nearly create. If you can see it in your mind, you can create it. So I'm always kind of maybe tinkering at something or trying to do something, and I'm contracted as well to kind of keep my finger on the pulse with industry design and industry standards and stuff. And
that's one of the things I like about your story is that you've come in with this hard skill, you've sharpened that skill through your like startup journey, and now on the other side of it, like you said, you know, as crazy as COVID was for you, you had an amazing parachute to fall back on. You effectively, right now, it's never that easy. You effectively could pick up the phone and be like, I'm available for some work, who wants to give me some? Do you know what I mean?
Technically, I suppose yes, but I don't know. I know I'm relatively okay at what I do, but I wouldn't necessarily think I could pick up the phone. That was a lovely kind of, as you say, parachute in the whole startup process. I just knew I could get a design job if it didn't work, and in many ways it helps you mitigate the risk. It
does,
for sure.
Especially with the family now.
100%. One thing I would say, as you mentioned, that my kind of craft has been sharpened. I think definitely in the design industry, there's a big focus on high fidelity and things looking pretty. The startup really showed me the importance of something being functional.
Wow.
And that really made me rethink. I need to go for function over form as opposed to form over function, which I was prone to doing before. And it's very interesting now. Say when you look at like a design library or an app or whatever, you can quickly see the focus here has been form, or the focus here has been function.
It's very cool.
And I would say as well, from a design perspective, it's all about ease of use, regardless of what I think of how pretty it looks. So if I approach a platform now, it might not look the way I think it could look, but if it does the job and people use it, I mean, that's the name of the game. That's what builds
totally.
Ease of use.
I mean, a quick little example of that. So my father-in-law's German and is over in Germany, and he has this old app on his phone where he logs the miles he does in his business car.
Okay.
And we were like, that app went out of business and he needed an alternative, and there was one that was like super amazing looking, like all the animation style, like very off that startup kind of vibe that you're talking about, and you know, it would do it automatically using GPS and Bluetooth in your phone, and we downloaded it and it was awful. It just did not work, and it was so badly designed. It looked amazing, but it was and literally we ended up downloading the ugliest looking app that just did the job perfectly, and it just shows you, like, you know, it is interesting.
Definitely, being in the startup, you have to lose your ego very quickly of how good you can make something look. And very often you have to boil everything down to the simplest formula, to the simplest design, simplest structure, and then when you get that structure right or that flow right, then you can slowly build it out and design it out.
It's perfect. Mate, final question. I don't even know how long we've been going for, but we're trying to keep these relatively short. If you could go back to the Andy who was ringing the doorbell 30 times in 2017 and you could just literally shout something out from your car at him, what would you say to him?
That's a very good question. My goodness.
Always the big ones at the end.
Well, what I would say is I wouldn't change anything, because the lessons we learned and how naive I was or whatever, I needed to learn those lessons at that time. But if I could give a wee hint or a pointer, I would say that no matter if you have 5 hours or 50 hours or 80 hours a week to spend at something, there will always be work to do, and your personal health has to come first.
Wow.
Because whether you're tired or whether you're not tired, the same work has to be done.
So true.
So that's why you can't afford not to have quality downtime, or else anybody that has experienced burnout will see that. But at that time I hadn't, and there will always be something to do. There will always be needs. There will always be people that need your time. There will always be stuff that are high priority, but there's only one of you and a finite amount of years in the context of this life. And it's okay to kind of have that priority first.
Love that. Mate, swimming deep in the baths, that's what we're all about. Incredible. Mate, thank you. Really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Always a pleasure.
And like I've said, I think in every one of these episodes, it's always nice to do this artificially constructed kind of conversation, because you get wee aspects of each other that you don't normally get. We literally had lunch before this.
Exactly.
And we didn't cover any of this sort of ground. It's interesting. And thank you very much for checking it out. If you'd like to find out some more about our other amazing members who are part of the Baths, you can check out the Meet the Members page, where you can see other kind of video conversations just like this, or you can throw it in your tab and listen to it while you're working. And like we always say, if you aren't a member of the Baths and you're interested in kind of finding a home for yourself or for your business, we'd love to hear from you, and you can always come and get a wee tour, come and see the place for yourself, and there'll be plenty of friendly faces who want to say hello. So
Chat to this guy.
Thank you very much. Hope you have a good day.
Thanks everyone.